Grief has a strange way of making everything louder. The silence, the footsteps, the sound of a cardboard box giving way under rain. I came back from my morning walk slower than usual. The sidewalk felt longer now without her hand in mine. The gate creaked. It always did, but this time it sounded like it was warning me. Two boxes sat by the trash bins, half collapsed from the night's storm. One was sealed with duct tape. The other had burst open. I wasn't planning to look, but something caught my eye, a strip of blue ribbon, the kind they used to pin above your heart after a war. I bent down. My knees protested. Inside the soggy box, everything blurred at once: the bronze star, my purple heart, the flag they gave me when my brother died, a framed letter signed by the commandant himself, now stained with runoff and smeared ink. They were mine, and she threw them out like they were rotting leftovers. I took them out, one by one, laying them carefully on the ground. I stood there for what felt like an hour, maybe longer. When Lisa came outside, she didn't flinch. She just sighed. "Oh my God, Dad, it's just stuff." I didn't speak. She crossed her arms. "You're never going to use it. It's not like you're going to war again. You want Lily growing up in a house that feels like a museum." I clenched my jaw. She stepped closer. "It's clutter, Dad, let it go." I looked down at the medal in my hand, the one I got after that hellstorm in Fallujah. I was 22. I still remember the smell of smoke and sand. I still dream in static. She wouldn't understand. Not because she couldn't. Because she didn't want to. "I didn't know you felt that way," I said. She rolled her eyes. "It's not personal. It's just time to simplify. You always said you hated fuss." I forced a breath through my nose. "Your mother would have asked first." Lisa looked away. I gathered the medals, the frame, the flag, each piece heavier than the last. My hands didn't shake, but they wanted to. Back inside, I laid everything out on the dining table, the one her husband said was too dated for the remodel. I dried each item with the sleeve of my sweater, even the ones already ruined. I sat down across from them, a quiet courtroom, evidence of a life she tried to throw away. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. I let her move in. I let her take over. I let silence become permission. She thought I was just an old man with a weak heart and a fatting name. She thought the medals were just clutter, but each one told a story, a wound, a truth. And I wasn't done telling mine. I turned off the lights, let the moon touch the metal, then I whispered just loud enough for the walls to hear me. "You're not the only one who knows how to clear a house. I live here, but I'm not welcome." Grief is loud in the beginning: casseroles, condolences, phone calls. Then it quiets and the real erosion begins. They moved in the week after the funeral. Lisa said it was just temporary, until things settle. Jason wheeled in the crib before I even knew she was pregnant. They called it help. I called it something else. The first thing to go was my recliner. "We're rearranging the living room for better flow," Lisa said, dragging it out to the curb like it was broken junk. "Jason's back needs a firmer seat anyway." I didn't say anything. Next came the thermostat. I tried turning up the heat one morning. It blinked access DENIED. Jason had changed the code. "Just keeping costs down," he said when I asked. "You like it cold, right, Pops?" "Pops?" I'd been called corporal, sergeant, husband, dad. Now I was Pops, like a cartoon grandpa too deaf to matter. They turned my den into a nursery. Didn't ask. Just painted over my wall of books and replaced it with pastel animals. My desk, the one I built myself in 1978, ended up in the garage under a tarp. I overheard Jason on a call one evening, his voice bouncing off the hallway walls. "She won't say no to us. It's basically our house already." He laughed. "Just a matter of time." That night I ate dinner alone in the garage. Cold beans, crackers, No one noticed I was missing. I sat beside the desk, ran my fingers along the carved edge where my wife once doodled her initials during a power outage. I used to think memories lived in people. Turns out, they also live in wood and dust. When I went back inside, the lights were off. My room door was closed. My own bedroom, now the furthest room down a hallway of silence. I opened the drawer of the nightstand. Inside, the deed, folded and worn from the years. I unfolded it and stared at the names. Mine and Lisa, added after my stroke, when I was too tired to argue and too grateful to be alive. She'd called it inheritance prep, said it would keep things clean when the time came. Now she walks around like the time had already come. I traced the edge of the paper with my thumb. It was still my house, on paper. But paper doesn't turn thermostats. It doesn't stop a crib from swallowing your den. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just alert. When you've served in combat, you learn the feeling, the moment before the ambush. The quiet creep of being cornered by something that once called you sir. I folded the deed, tucked it back where she wouldn't think to look. They thought I was fadding. But I was waking up. And I'd spent my whole life learning how to reclaim lost ground. The phone call from the realtor. There's something about being watched in your own home that makes you shrink without realizing it, like the walls themselves are pushing you out. The VA sent someone last week, a care coordinator, young, kind. She asked all the right questions. How's your mobility? Are you eating regularly? Do you feel safe here? I smiled, nodded, said I was fine, because saying anything else felt like betrayal not of Lisa but of my pride. She left behind a pamphlet, Elder Support Resources. I tossed it in the kitchen drawer and closed it fast. But the next day I called Mark. Mark and I served together in Beirut. He'd taken up real estate after his second divorce, mostly working with veterans selling off family homes. He understood paperwork. He understood men like me. I don't want to start a war, I said when he picked up. Just a check, a quiet one. He didn't ask why. Give me 3 days, he said. I didn't tell Lisa. I didn't tell anyone. I just waited. That same week, I passed by the kitchen while Jason was on a video call. He had no idea I could hear him from the hallway. Once we sell this place, we'll have more than enough for the lake house, he said. I'll just push it through the trust. Old man's basically checked out anyway. Old man. I stood there silent, every word tightening something in my ribs. He ended the call, whistled on his way to the fridge, and didn't even glance my way. That night I didn't sleep. The next morning I called Mark back. You still got those 3 days? He grunted, I'm ready, come in tomorrow. His office was plain, no flags, no fanfare. Just framed pictures of closing ceremonies and folded arms beside smiling clients. He didn't greet me with a handshake, just slid a folder across the desk. I opened it. There were 3 documents on top. First, a revocation of my sole trustee rights, signed digitally. Second, a pre-listing agreement, marked drafted but dated 2 weeks ago. Third, a letter from Lisa, addressed to a property management firm, stating my declining condition and granting her full authority to proceed with sale preparations. I stared at the pages, blinking too slow, too long. She filed a preliminary claim on the deed 6 months ago, Mark said. Said you were in recovery and couldn't manage your own affairs. I ran a hand over my face. My skin felt foreign. She's already gotten 2 evaluations, both from doctors tied to Jason's insurance group, he added. They're building a narrative, a clean one. I swallowed hard. Can she sell it without me signing anything? Not yet, he said, but she's setting the table. I closed the folder. Mark leaned forward. We can stop this, but we have to move now. I know you're tired. I know what this feels like, but they're counting on your silence." I looked at the window behind him. Rain tapped the glass like a metronome. I thought of the metals, the chair, the thermostat. I nodded once, then let's make some noise. Because if they were setting the table, I'd be the one flipping it. They filed a quiet title action. There's something gutting about seeing your name printed in a courtroom petition. Not for honor, not for pension, but for disposal. Mark slid the file across the desk. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. One page in, I saw the words, "Due to declining capacity, petitioner seeks sole legal ownership." Petitioner, Lisa Hayden. Respondent, me. Declining capacity. I read out loud, my voice flat. Mark nodded once. They filed it 2 months ago. Quiet title action. Standard move when someone wants to wipe another name off the deed without a fight. I scanned the rest. There were lines about me being mentally unfit, incoherent, unable to manage legal responsibilities. All written like I wasn't a person, just an inconvenience waiting to expire. I set the pages down carefully. My hands didn't tremble, my jaw didn't clench. But my fist curled slowly on my knee. Not in rage. In resolve. "They plan to finalize it next month," Mark continued. "You won't get a notice unless you respond. That's how these things work. It's meant to slide under radar." "She's building the legal record," I muttered, "so no one asks questions when they sell it." Mark nodded again. I stood, walked to the window. A pickup truck rolled by. The sound of gravel under tires reminded me of base camp, of men who learned the hard way that the real ambushes come with smiles and soft voices. "How long would it take," I asked slowly, "for me to sell it first?" Mark turned in his chair. "You'd have to move fast, get ahead of the claim, override her assertion of incapacity, and make the sale airtight." "She'd contest it." "She can try," he said. "But if we handle it clean, real buyer, legal review, full disclosure, it'll hold." I faced him. "Can you do that?" His gaze didn't flinch. "Only if you trust me." It wasn't a small ask. But I'd trusted him once before, 20 miles outside Fallujah, when we were pinned and had 2 options, wait or push through. Mark pushed first, gave me cover, saved my leg. So I nodded. "I'm not trying to punish her," I said. "I just want my name to mean something again, in my own home." Mark stood, held out his hand. "Then we move today." I shook it. His grip was solid, familiar. He pulled a notepad from his drawer. "You'll need to gather everything. Deed copies, your old medical records, proof of capacity, anything that shows you're fit to decide." "I kept everything," I said. "She doesn't know what drawers I built in that house." He cracked a grin. "Semper Fi, old man." We started making a list, short, ruthless, clear. As we planned, a weight lifted from my chest. Not because it was easy, but because I was finally standing on my feet again. They thought I'd fade. They forgot I spent a lifetime standing back up. And this time, I wasn't asking for permission. The documents they didn't want me to find. Some men keep their memories in photo albums. I kept mine in fireproof boxes and taped up folders marked in black Sharpie. I waited until the house was quiet. Jason's video games humming through the floor. Lisa packing on another late-night phone call, probably updating someone on the transition. I pulled the attic ladder down slow, careful not to let it creak. The air changed the moment I stepped up. Dust, heat, and the smell of cedar from the old trunks I never opened around them. In the far corner, tucked beneath my navy duffel, was the metal case I'd stored for decades, not for court, but for peace of mind. I knelt and unlocked it. Inside, folders arranged like chapters of my life. Original property deed, signed in 1994, sole owner me. Power of attorney, the one I revoked after my stroke recovery. I remembered the nurse's face when I said I wanted it back. She smiled like I'd just stood up on my own for the first time. Joint will, signed before Lisa ever used the word streamline, before she convinced my wife to make things easier for the family. I read each page. My eyes burned, but I didn't stop. I didn't let myself stop. Lisa didn't count on me keeping hard copies. She assumed old men forget, but I remember everything. I found the old flip phone in a box labeled junk. The charger was frayed, but it still worked. There were only a few voicemails saved, but one of them was crystal clear. Dad doesn't know what's best anymore. We're just getting ahead of the process. Her voice smooth, practiced. I played it again, slower. She didn't sound cruel, that's what stung the most. She sounded efficient, like she was managing a file, not a father. I recorded the voicemail onto a USB, labeled it in red ink, clipped it to the folder. Every page I scanned, I named carefully. Deed original 1994, PDF. POA revoked 2018, PDF. Will sign both 2002, PDF. Voicemail Lisa capacity claim, MP3. I didn't shake, I didn't cry. I just loaded each file into a shared drive mark created for evidence. Each upload felt like clicking a safety off. Lisa thought I'd never look. Jason assumed I couldn't type. They both mistook silence for surrender. I zipped the last folder and emailed it to Mark with the subject, locked and loaded. Then I sat back, let the heat of the attic wrap around me. There were no fireworks, no yelling, no satisfaction. Just a strange calm, the kind that only comes when you stop surviving and start preparing. I stared at the files, neatly stacked, shining in the glow of my old desk lamp. And for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't the one being documented. I was the one writing the record. Jason's threat at the kitchen table. Bullies don't knock, they sit across from you like they've already won. Jason waited until Lisa left for her prenatal checkup. Timing wasn't a coincidence. I came into the kitchen for my coffee and there he was, leaned back in my chair like he'd paid for it. Legs spread, hands folded like a negotiator. "Hey," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, just sat down and waited for the pitch. "You're not getting any younger," he began. "And we get it, this house means a lot to you, but it's too much for one person. We just want what's fair." Fair. That word has a strange way of sounding dirty when spoken by someone with too many plans and not enough soul. He smiled, but his eyes never moved. They stayed locked on me like a predator trying to read a weak spot. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said. "No one wants to push you out, but the equity in this place could set up Lily's college, our future. It just doesn't make sense to drag this out." I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold, still tasted better than the bile in his voice. "You won't win," he added. "Not legally, not socially. You'll embarrass yourself." His finger tapped the table twice, like punctuation at the end of a verdict. I looked at him for a long while. Let the silence stretch just enough to make him uncomfortable. He squirmed, adjusted his sleeve, looked toward the window. Then I said it, low and steady. "I've buried men with more honor than you'll ever understand." His jaw tightened. He scoffed, leaned back. "You're still hanging onto that soldier crap," he muttered, standing up. "Times change." He walked toward the hallway, muttering something under his breath about lawyers and paperwork. When the door clicked shut behind him, I reached for the drawer by my side, the one where he'd tossed my discharge folder like junk mail last week. I opened it and pulled out the envelope. Inside were my DD-214, my Bronze Star citation, and the letter my commanding officer wrote after I took shrapnel to the shoulder and kept fighting. Jason hadn't read a word of it, just saw a man with gray hair and assumed his war had ended. But my war had just started. And what he didn't know, what made my smile widen in that silent kitchen, was that the buyer was already lined up. Mark had found her, a Marine widow, cash-ready, someone Lisa once mocked at a cookout for never moving on. She signed the offer 2 days ago. Legally binding, fully compliant. And the house they thought was theirs. Already gone, they just didn't know it yet. I slid the folder back into the drawer, straightened the tablecloth, picked up my cold coffee. Some people measure a man by what he holds onto, but I've always measured by what he's willing to let go just to take something back. The house showing they never saw coming. There's a quiet satisfaction in doing something right under their noses, not out of spite, but out of necessity, out of survival. Mark pulled into the driveway just after 6:45 a.m. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. Dew clung to the grass like a secret waiting to be spoken. "She's 5 minutes out," he said, stepping out of his truck. "You ready?" I looked up at the windows, the nursery, the bedroom, the den that used to smell like cedar and ink. I nodded. "I've been ready since the day they tossed my medals in the trash." The buyer pulled up in a dark gray sedan. She stepped out slowly. Short hair, crisp coat, a cane she didn't lean on. She moved like someone who had learned how to endure pain without flinching. "Mr. Hayden," she said, holding out her hand. "It's an honor." "Call me Walt." "Charlene," she said, gripping my palm with more strength than I expected. "Mark said this home has a soul." "Yours too," I replied. "I'm hoping it finds one again." She didn't smile, just nodded once like she understood exactly what I meant. Inside we didn't rush. She touched nothing, she only walked. Through the hall. Past the den. Into the kitchen. When we reached the living room, she stopped in front of the mantel. The medals were there right where I had placed them, not for display, not for pride, for memory. She looked at each one like it was a name, not an object. Then she saluted. "This house has stories," she whispered. "It deserves peace." We didn't speak for a moment, the kind of silence that doesn't weigh on you, the kind that lets you breathe. She turned. "I'm not going to haggle." "I'm not going to argue," I replied. Mark chuckled from the doorway. "Then I guess we're all set." That afternoon, the papers were signed. No smoke. No trick. No trap. I was still a legal co-owner. Everything was above board. I had the right. Jason's quiet title filing hadn't gone through. Lisa's power of attorney claim had no legal standing. The law still recognized me. And I made sure it would remember. Mark grinned as he gathered the final signature. "You sure about her?" he asked, slipping the papers into the manila envelope. "She's the one Lisa always rolled her eyes at, right? Called her bitter or something at that barbecue." I nodded. "Exactly why she's perfect." He laughed long and low. "You know, Walt, there's a kind of justice that doesn't need a gavel." "There's also a kind that doesn't knock," I replied. "Just walks through the front door before they even know it's open." As Mark left, I sat in the empty living room. The sun had finally made its way through the blinds, washing everything in that golden, quiet light that only shows up when you finally let something go. The couch was gone, the crib too. The echo in the room felt clean, not hollow. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be erased. I felt like I had already written the ending. Lisa walks into a sold sign. There's a silence that comes before a reckoning, like the world holds its breath before the truth drops. I parked my truck 2 blocks down, just off the main road. Didn't want to be seen. Didn't need to be. Some moments aren't meant to be shared, they're meant to be witnessed. The sun had just dipped behind the trees when Lisa's car pulled into the driveway. White SUV, clean, cold, just like her. She slowed down the moment she saw the sign. Big, bold, red letters across the front lawn. Sold. The brake lights lit up hard. Her door swung open so fast it nearly hit the mailbox. "What the hell is this?" Her voice cut through the quiet like a bone saw. I watched her march up to the sign, grab it by the post and yank. She threw it across the lawn like it had cursed her. Jason jumped out of the passenger side, confused. What's going on? The house is sold, Jason, she shrieked. It's gone. He rushed past her up the porch steps, reached for the handle. Click. Locked. He tried again, nothing. The keypad didn't respond. The code had changed. I made sure of it. Where are the keys? He shouted. Where's the backup? Lisa was already tearing through her purse, fingers flying, hair sticking to her cheek. But there were no keys, no backup. She banged on the door with her fist. I watched her read the note taped to the glass. She stopped moving. Just stood there. Then she read it again. Her lips moved slowly. The house is sold. I am not your burden. I was your father. Jason took the paper and crumpled it in his hand. Where the hell is he? He muttered. I leaned back in my seat, just far enough into shadow. Lisa turned in a slow circle, scanning the neighborhood like I might rise out of the bushes and give her answers. But I'd already given them. In ink. In signature. In silence. They called someone, maybe the police, maybe a lawyer. Didn't matter. The papers were filed. The sale was clean. The utilities already transferred. The deed rewritten. The locks changed by a veteran-owned service I trusted more than any family I'd ever raised. Jason kicked the bottom step on his way down. Lisa stood frozen. Not crying. Not yelling. Just stunned. Because the world she built on assumption had finally collapsed under fact. I stayed long enough to watch the porch light flicker on. Not for them, for Charlene, the new owner, the one who'd walk into that home with respect, not entitlement. I started the truck, pulled slowly away. No music. No smile. Just a long, quiet breath that tasted like freedom. And as I drove off, I didn't feel like I'd lost a home. I felt like I'd reclaimed a war. The community reacts. Revenge doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with silence, the kind that spreads. By Tuesday morning, the phone started ringing. Not mine, theirs. Jason lost a listing. A client he'd been courting for weeks called him untrustworthy and pulled out. Another canceled a showing. Lisa's book club didn't meet that week. Then the next. Then the texts stopped altogether. It wasn't just about the house being sold. It was how it was sold. Mark told me the first realtor who found out said, "Damn." He flipped the whole script without saying a word. The whispers started online. A local neighborhood blog picked it up. The post read, "A veteran's quiet revenge. How one man outsmarted his own daughter with a signature." I didn't write it, I didn't even comment, but I read it twice. The post included a photo of the sold sign Lisa had thrown across the lawn, now bent and muddy in the grass. People commented, "That poor man, she tried to erase him. Good for him. About time someone fought back the right way. A Marine shouldn't have to fight his own kids." Charlene, the buyer, posted a tribute of her own on her social media page. A home built with service, stolen with silence, returned with dignity. She added a photo of my medals still on the mantle, still respected. I didn't ask her to post that, but I was grateful she did. Lisa messaged me once. Just once. A single text. "You ruined everything." I stared at the screen for a long time, then I put the phone down. She hadn't reached out before that. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to ask why. No call, no visit, just blame. I didn't reply. Because she had ruined everything long before I ever lifted a finger. She thought betrayal came without consequence. She thought I would disappear like clutter in a box, like a chair on the curb, like a signature on a page she could rewrite. But I had simply refused to stay buried. At the VA Community Center, someone recognized me during breakfast. "You're the Marine from that story, right?" I nodded. "Hell of a move," he said, raising his coffee. "Quiet, clean, semper fi." I nodded again, didn't say a word, didn't have to. Because when a community turns against betrayal, it doesn't do it with torches. It does it with silence, with doors that stop opening, with eyes that no longer look your way. And for the first time in a long while, I was the one being looked at not through pity, but through respect. The final salute. Some victories come with parades, mine came with peace. I unpacked the medals one last time carefully, slowly, not because they were fragile, but because I wanted to feel each one in my hand again. The Bronze Star, the Good Conduct Medal, the folded flag that once lay over my brother's casket, symbols of service, symbols Lisa said were clutter. I lined them in a new shadow box, the same one Charlene gifted me the day we closed. Oak frame, acid-free glass. She said, "This deserves a better home." I hung it above my new desk in the Veterans Center apartment, a simple room with good light and a window facing east. Each morning I took walks before sunrise. The grounds were quiet. No one asked questions they didn't mean. I passed the same bench each time, the one where Bill sat reading that paperback with half the pages dog-eared. Bill, Korean War vet, wore 2 hearing aids and still cursed like a boot. When he finally read the blog post about me, he slid his tray next to mine and said, "Damn poetic." I shrugged, didn't feel like poetry. He grinned, eyes sharp. "That's what makes it real." We played chess every Thursday. He beat me more often than not, but I didn't mind. The games weren't about winning, just proof that my mind still worked, still mattered. I stayed out of Lisa's way. There was no reason to speak. Mark told me she'd tried to challenge the sale but was laughed out of the lawyer's office. "Your dad legally outmaneuvered you," they said, "and he did it quietly." I didn't gloat. I didn't reply to her last text. I just lived. One night I stood by the window. The vet center was quiet. No sounds but a few porch swings rocking in the wind and the low hum of someone watching baseball down the hall. I lit a candle. Not for ritual. For memory. Then I stepped onto the small balcony and stood at attention, shoulders back, chest still, facing nothing but trees and sky and moon. I raised my right hand. Held it steady. Not for them. For me. A final salute. Not to a flag, but to a life. To what I built. To what I refused to let them take. I whispered to the still air. I never needed her permission to matter. I just needed to remember it myself.